The Great Pyramid of Giza shares its celestial blueprint with a temple complex in Mexico. This video presents 25 evidence-based mysteries that reveal a hidden global network of knowledge, connecting ancient sites across vast oceans and impossible distances. You will journey from the deserts of Egypt to the temples of Cambodia, discovering startling parallels in engineering, astronomy, and myth that conventional history cannot easily explain. How did cultures separated by millennia build pyramids aligned to the exact same stars? What lost science allowed them to calculate the Earth's dimensions with stunning accuracy? By the end, you will see the ancient world as a single, interconnected tapestry of human achievement, forcing a complete re-evaluation of our past. What does it truly mean when the same story is written in stone on opposite sides of the world? The official timeline of our ancient past presents a world of isolated cultures. We are taught that the great civilizations of Egypt, the Indus Valley, and the Americas rose and fell in complete ignorance of one another, separated by vast oceans and impassable continents. Yet this established narrative begins to fracture under the weight of a simple, profound observation. Why do we find the same sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in the pyramids of Giza and the temples of the Maya, cultures supposedly divided by thousands of years and an entire ocean? How is it that the builders of Göbekli Tepe, working over 12,000 years ago, and the architects of Stonehenge millennia later, both possessed a complex understanding of celestial cycles that they felt compelled to immortalize in stone? For centuries, from the first European explorers who marveled at the stone cities in the jungles of Central America to the modern archaeologists using satellite imaging, these parallels have been documented as curious anomalies. They are the architectural and mythological echoes that should not exist. When you place the star maps, the pyramid designs, and the creation stories of these distant cultures side by side, a pattern emerges that challenges the very foundation of our history. This is not about finding a single smoking gun, but about confronting a constellation of evidence that points toward a forgotten chapter in the human story. To see this pattern for yourself, we must first clear away the assumptions and look at the evidence with fresh eyes, asking not if these connections are possible according to our current models, but what the stones themselves are trying to tell us. The arrangement of the Giza pyramids is not a random act of architecture. It is a deliberate, scaled map of the three bright stars in Orion's belt, with the size of each pyramid corresponding to the relative brightness of its celestial counterpart. This is a sophisticated form of astronomical writing in stone, a language that we are only just beginning to decode, yet this language was apparently spoken on the other side of the world. In the highlands of Mexico, the ancient city of Teotihuacan presents a nearly identical stellar blueprint. There, the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Temple of Quetzalcoatl are positioned in a layout that mirrors the same three stars. The correlations are too precise, the geometric relationships too similar, to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Two cultures with no known contact both chose this specific and relatively small star pattern. They both went to the monumental effort of building massive structures to reflect it on the ground, and they both integrated this celestial map into the very heart of their spiritual and civic worlds. The odds of this happening independently are so vanishingly small that it forces a profound question. Were the builders of Giza and Teotihuacan looking at the same instruction manual, a shared cosmological doctrine that has since been lost to time? This is not just about stars and stones. It is about a unified vision of humanity's place in the cosmos, a vision so powerful it was carved into the earth at opposite ends of the world. If this was a shared knowledge, how did it travel and who were the teachers? The Great Pyramid's secrets extend far beyond its alignment with the stars, reaching into the very fabric of the earth itself. This structure embodies a geodetic knowledge so advanced it defies simple explanation. The pyramid's base perimeter, divided by twice its height, yields a figure incredibly close to the mathematical constant pi. This is not a rough estimate, but a precise calculation built directly into its stone proportions. Such sophistication implies the builders were not merely skilled laborers. They were master geometers working with a profound understanding of mathematical principles. How could an ancient culture achieve this level of precision without the tools we consider essential today? The mysteries only deepen when we consider its location. The site of the Great Pyramid sits at the exact center of the Earth's landmass, a geographical fact impossible to determine without a comprehensive, perhaps even aerial, view of the entire planet. This was not a random choice for a royal tomb. It was a deliberate placement, suggesting its creators possessed a unified science of geography that mapped the world on a global scale. The pyramid's sides are aligned to the four cardinal directions with an accuracy within a fraction of a single degree. Achieving such perfection in orientation across a structure of that immense size would be a formidable challenge for modern engineering teams with laser-guided technology. For an ancient civilization to do so seems almost impossible. This convergence of mathematics, geography, and engineering points toward a single, startling conclusion. The pyramid is more than a monument. It is a repository of a lost science, a body of knowledge that understood our world in its entirety. Could this advanced understanding have been a shared legacy, a global doctrine that was somehow disseminated to other corners of the ancient world? The evidence suggests we are looking at the work of a forgotten school of thinkers whose grasp of the Earth's true nature was far greater than we have ever credited. This same precise, almost mathematical language of stone echoes in the very dimensions of ancient sites separated by oceans. From the colossal foundation blocks at Baalbek to the interlocking walls of Sacsayhuaman, builders seem to follow an invisible ruler. Researchers analyzing these structures have identified a recurring unit of length, a measurement now called the megalithic yard. It translates to roughly 2.72 feet. This is not an approximate guess. This exact unit appears in the precise circles of Stonehenge, the grand alignments of the Karnak stones in France, and remarkably, in the layouts of ancient cities in the Americas. The probability that cultures across the globe independently settled on this specific, non-intuitive length for their most sacred constructions is astronomically low. It suggests something far more profound than parallel development. It hints at a shared standard, a universal blueprint for sacred geometry. How could such a standard be enforced across continents without any record of communication or trade between these builders? There were no international treaties or standardization committees. The logistical challenge is immense. Imagine trying to ensure that a worker in Peru and a stone cutter in Lebanon are both using a measuring stick of the exact same length, down to a fraction of an inch without any direct contact. This goes far beyond a simple idea that might spread. This is the transfer of a specific technical constant. The persistence of this unit implies a deep, organized connection, perhaps a foundational school of knowledge that instructed builder communities worldwide. This was not just about how to build, but about what to build and according to what precise rules. The megalithic yard seems to be a fingerprint left by a common teacher, a lost civilization of master surveyors whose influence shaped the ancient world. If they shared a system of measurement, what other profound knowledge did they carry with them? the pyramid shape is a ghost haunting the ancient world, appearing and reappearing across impossible divides. From the flat river plains of Egypt to the lush jungles of Guatemala and the distant islands of Indonesia, this singular form emerges as the ultimate architectural archetype. In Egypt, the step pyramid of Djoser rises as a staircase to the heavens. In Mesoamerica, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan mirrors this very concept, a colossal ascent toward the sky. Both are stepped, both are precisely aligned to the sun's journey, and both served as the sacred heart of their civilizations. While a tomb in one place and a temple in another, the underlying blueprint feels eerily consistent. It is not merely the shape that gives us pause, but the recurrence of highly specific, non-intuitive knowledge. How to achieve such stability, how to orient a multi-ton structure to the solstice sun with pinpoint accuracy, these are not self-evident discoveries. They are the hallmarks of a sophisticated, tested science. Could this science have been discovered independently, over and over? Perhaps. But when you see the same complex recipe for celestial architecture written in stone on opposite sides of the planet, you must consider another possibility. This points toward a shared source, a foundational school of thought that understood the pyramid not just as a building, but as a tool for connecting the Earth with the cosmos. The form itself may be the most enduring relic of a lost global civilization, a silent testament to a time when the world's builders were all reading from the same, now vanished page. The pyramid's form is a powerful echo, but the stories carved upon its walls speak an even more universal language. Across the globe, the same two mythic figures emerge from the collective imagination of our ancestors, the serpent and the bird. In the heart of Mesoamerica, the great god Quetzalcoatl was envisioned as a feathered serpent, a being of profound wisdom who brought knowledge and creation to humanity. His very form is a fusion of the earthly serpent and the celestial bird, a symbol of duality and enlightenment. Far across the world along the Nile, a strikingly similar drama played out in myth. There, the serpent Apep represented the forces of chaos, battling the sun god Ra each night, while the sacred Bennu bird, a heron-like creature, rose as a powerful symbol of rebirth and the sun's cyclical journey. The parallels do not stop at the edges of the Atlantic. In the ancient traditions of India, the Naga are revered as divine serpents possessing great knowledge, and Garuda, a mighty bird-like being, serves as the celestial vehicle of the god Vishnu. These are not just vague resemblances. The archetypes are consistently detailed and layered with meaning. The serpent repeatedly embodies earthly knowledge, primordial waters, or the challenge of chaos, while the bird soars as a representation of solar power, celestial order, and spiritual rebirth. How is it that cultures with no apparent contact crafted such intricate and analogous mythic partners? One explanation points to a shared, deeply ancient source culture, whose core stories were carried across the world and adapted over millennia. Another possibility is that these symbols represent a fundamental human understanding of the cosmos, a universal language of the psyche where the earth-bound serpent and the sky-born bird become characters in our oldest story, the story of creation itself. This pervasive symbolism suggests that our ancestors were not only connected by a system of measurement but by a shared mythology, a common dream written in the stars and retold in stone. The stones of the ancient world were not merely silent monuments. They were designed to sing. Recent acoustic studies have uncovered a hidden layer of sophistication within these sacred spaces, revealing that their builders possessed a profound understanding of sound itself. Deep beneath the island of Malta lies the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, a labyrinthine complex carved from solid rock over 6,000 years ago. Within its central chamber, known as the Oracle Room, A deep male voice speaking at a certain pitch can create a powerful, bone-rattling resonance that fills the entire space. This is not a random acoustic quirk. The chamber is meticulously sculpted to amplify specific frequencies, vibrations that researchers suggest could alter brainwave patterns and induce heightened states of awareness. This was not just architecture, it was a technology of consciousness. Thousands of miles across the Atlantic, the Mayan pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza holds a similar secret. When you stand at the base of its grand staircase and clap your hands, the returning echo is not a simple reverberation. It is a perfect crystalline chirp that mirrors the call of the sacred Quetzal bird, a divine symbol deeply woven into their mythology. The steps were engineered as a precise sound diffractor, each one acting like the teeth of a giant comb to filter and shape the clap into that specific avian cry. How could two cultures, separated by an entire ocean and millennia, both discover the complex physics of sound wave manipulation? More importantly, why did they both choose to embed this knowledge into the very heart of their most sacred sites? The coincidence is deafening. This points toward a shared, almost spiritual recognition of sound as a fundamental creative force. It suggests that these ancient architects were not just building for the eye, but for the ear and the mind, using vibrational science as a bridge to the divine. If they shared an understanding of sacred resonance, what other invisible sciences did they master? From the resonant chambers of ancient temples, we turn to the silent, solitary sentinels that pierce the sky. The impulse to raise a single, towering stone is a ghost that haunts the archaeological record, a tradition that appears with startling consistency from the deserts of Egypt to the green hills of Europe. These are the obelisks, the menhirs, the stelae, the monoliths, each a testament to a shared human drive to reach for the heavens. In Egypt, these were the obelisks, breathtaking feats of engineering carved from a single block of red granite. Their sides were covered in hieroglyphs, and they were often crowned with a small, pyramid-shaped capstone called a pyramidion, sometimes sheathed in electrum to catch the first and last rays of the sun. They were needles of stone designed to stitch the earth to the sky. Yet this was not a uniquely Egyptian idea. Far to the west, the Celtic peoples of ancient Europe raised their own versions, the menhirs of Karnak in France. Hundreds of these rough-hewn standing stones stretch for miles in eerie, parallel rows, a forest of stone whose purpose still whispers of celestial observation and territorial marking. Across the Mediterranean, in the highlands of Axum in Ethiopia, massive, intricately carved stelae were erected, some towering over 100 feet tall, serving as grand markers for royal resting places. And in the humid heartlands of ancient Mexico, the Olmec people carved colossal stone heads and other monoliths from basalt, each one a monumental effort. The technological challenge behind every single one of these stones is almost beyond comprehension. Quarrying a 1,000-ton block of granite with stone tools, transporting it dozens of miles without the wheel, and then raising it to stand perfectly vertical, these are tasks that would test the limits of modern engineering. So why do we see this same immensely difficult solution arising independently, again and again? It cannot be mere coincidence. The form itself, a single vertical stone, seems to have held a universal power. It was a world axis, a connection point between the underworld, the earth, and the celestial realm. Many were precisely placed to cast a shadow marking the solstice or to point toward a significant star. This suggests a shared symbolic vocabulary, a deep-rooted understanding that a stone pointing skyward could channel cosmic power, define sacred space, and commemorate a people's legacy. The global distribution of these monoliths points not to a single inventor. but perhaps to a foundational idea so powerful that it was rediscovered or passed along, a piece of a lost technological and spiritual tradition that spanned the globe. If the pyramid was a cosmic mountain, then the standing stone was the world tree, and its roots seemed to have spread everywhere. This slow celestial wobble, known as the precession of the equinoxes, is a motion so gradual it takes 25,800 years to complete a single turn. You cannot feel it in your lifetime or even across 100 generations. Yet, the evidence suggests our ancestors not only knew of this cycle, they built their understanding of time itself around it. The great world ages of Hindu tradition, the Yuga cycles, describe vast epochs of creation and dissolution that align perfectly with the precessional rhythm. On the other side of the planet, the Mayan long count calendar, which famously ended its cycle in the year 2012, was also structured around this same grand cosmic clock, tracking a span of over 5,000 years with stunning accuracy. This knowledge is not something you can stumble upon. It requires meticulous, continuous observation of the stars over centuries, even millennia, to notice that the constellations marking the equinoxes slowly shift over the ages. How could cultures separated by oceans and centuries all possess this same, incredibly long-term data set? The architectural layout of Angkor Wat in Cambodia provides a breathtaking clue. This sprawling temple complex is a terrestrial map of the constellation Draco. As the Earth's axis precesses, the north celestial pole slowly circles through the sky, and the entire layout of Angkor Wat appears to be aligned with the position of Draco in the sky over 10,500 years ago. It is a snapshot of the heavens from a bygone era, frozen in stone. This was not an observation made in a single lifetime. It implies a tradition of sky watching so enduring, so patient, that it could track the slow dance of the cosmos across eons. This shared awareness of precession points toward a common source, a foundational civilization of sky watchers who first charted this grand cycle and passed this knowledge down, a legacy of time written in myth and monument across the globe. What other long-term cosmic clocks were they tracking, and what did they believe would happen when the great cycle finally turned? Water flows as a silent architect of civilization, and the ancient world's mastery over it reveals another layer of this global mystery. From the arid deserts of Jordan to the flooded jungles of Guatemala, cultures with no known contact developed nearly identical solutions for one of humanity's most pressing challenges. The Nabateans, who carved their magnificent city of Petra from rose-red cliffs, faced a brutal environment where water was more precious than gold. Their answer was a network of cleverly engineered channels, dams, and cisterns that collected every drop of scarce rainwater, channeling it through the rock to create a hidden, thriving oasis in the heart of the desert. They understood hydrology with a precision that feels almost modern, using gravity and subtle gradients to make water flow where they needed it most. On the other side of the world, the Maya of Central America confronted the opposite problem: torrential rains and seasonal droughts. At their great city of Tikal, they constructed vast, intricately plastered reservoirs that could hold millions of gallons of water, connected by a web of canals and filtration systems that sustained a massive urban population. Even more strikingly, in the Indus Valley, the city of Mohenjo-Daro featured not only sophisticated public water baths, but also an elaborate, city-wide drainage and sewer system that would not be rivaled in Europe for thousands of years. The common thread is not merely the presence of water systems, but the specific, advanced engineering principles they shared. They all utilized gravity-fed flow, avoiding the need for mechanical pumps. They all developed methods for filtration, using sand and gravel to purify their water supply, and they all integrated this hydraulic network directly into the core design of their cities, making water management a foundational element of urban life, not an afterthought. Could this be simple parallel problem solving? Perhaps. But when you see the same complex recipe of gravitational hydraulics, storage, and purification emerge independently across continents, it begins to feel less like coincidence and more like curriculum. This points toward a shared, foundational understanding of environmental engineering, a lost science of water that was as universal as the sacred geometry of their temples. If they shared a blueprint for managing the Earth's most vital resource, what other profound ecological knowledge might they have possessed? The same mastery over earth and water finds a startling parallel in the ancient command of fire. High on remote hilltops across Scotland and France, the weathered ramparts of Iron Age forts hold a secret that has baffled researchers for centuries. Sections of these massive stone walls have been transformed, melted, and fused into a solid, glass-like substance. This is vitrification, a process that requires sustained temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense it turns solid rock into a kind of crude, natural glass. The mystery is not just the how, but the why. Why would ancient builders go to the monumental effort of creating what amounted to a crude, brittle ceramic coating on their defensive walls? Some theories suggest it was a desperate, final act of fortification, a way to strengthen ramparts against invaders by literally welding the stones together. Others propose it was the catastrophic result of sieges where the walls themselves were set ablaze, though replicating such conditions experimentally has proven incredibly difficult. The puzzle deepens when we cross the Atlantic. In the high Andes, at certain Inca sites, archaeologists have found stones that show signs of the same vitrified transformation. Here, separated by an entire ocean and thousands of years from the European hill forts, we see the same enigmatic technological signature. This cannot be a case of parallel problem solving, for the problem itself is so unusual. It was not a practical way to build a stronger wall, as vitrified stone is often more brittle. This points towards something else entirely, a shared, experimental knowledge of high-temperature pyrotechnology. Were these cultures so distant from one another, all tapping into the same forgotten understanding of how to manipulate stone with fire? The presence of this specific, difficult technique on two continents suggests a lineage of advanced material science, a lost chapter in human innovation where fire was not just a tool, but a transformative element used to reshape the very fabric of the world. The same invisible mathematics that shaped the pyramids and temples also whispered through the very air, a harmonic code embedded in the dimensions of sacred space. Across the ancient world, from the banks of the Nile to the Acropolis of Athens, builders repeatedly encoded two specific, irrational numbers into their most revered creations, pi and the golden ratio. These are not simple, whole numbers one might discover through basic counting. They are complex, infinite constants that describe the perfect proportions of circles and spirals found throughout nature. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a textbook example, its base perimeter divided by its height yielding a figure remarkably close to 2 times pi, while the proportions of its inner chambers and outer form resonate with the golden ratio, approximately 1.618. This was not a rough approximation. It was a precise, intentional design principle built directly into millions of tons of stone. Centuries later and a sea away, the architects of the Parthenon in Greece constructed its entire facade around the golden rectangle. Every column, every pediment, every space between the pillars was calculated to conform to this specific, aesthetically perfect ratio. The same sacred geometry appears in the intricate blueprints of Hindu temples in India, where the precise layout, from the grand spire to the inner sanctum, is governed by geometric diagrams known as mandalas, which are themselves saturated with the proportions of the golden ratio. The independent discovery of these constants is theoretically possible, but their consistent and precise application in the holiest of places tells a different story. It suggests that these diverse cultures were not just using math for engineering. They were using it as a spiritual language, believing that by building these perfect ratios into their temples, they were aligning human creation with the fundamental, harmonic order of the cosmos itself. This points toward a common, esoteric source of knowledge, a lost school of thought that understood geometry not as mere measurement, but as the divine architecture of reality. If the same mathematical fingerprint appears on monuments worldwide, were they all trying to build a doorway to the same universal truth? These mathematical harmonies find a powerful echo in the oldest stories ever told. The foundational myths of creation, recited for millennia by cultures with no known contact, often tell the same tale. A world born from a dark, endless, and primordial sea is a narrative that appears in the cosmology of ancient Egypt, where the first land emerges from the watery chaos of none. This same idea of a world rising from the ocean is central to Polynesian creation chants and forms the bedrock of early Chinese mythology, where the universe hatches from a single cosmic egg floating in that formless expanse. The recurrence of these specific images, a world ocean and a cosmic egg, is too detailed to be a simple metaphor for birth. It feels like a shared memory of Genesis, passed down through countless generations. The parallels become even more striking with the legend of the Great Deluge. In the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by a god to build a great boat to save his family and the seeds of all living things from a world-destroying flood. This narrative is mirrored with uncanny precision in the Hebrew Bible story of Noah, a righteous man given the same divine warning and the same mission of preservation. Thousands of miles away, in the ancient Sanskrit texts of India, the sage Manu is similarly instructed by the god Vishnu to build a massive ship to survive a catastrophic flood that will cleanse the world. The core plot is identical: a divine warning, a constructed vessel, and the survival of a chosen few to repopulate the earth. While floods are a common natural disaster, the specificity of this story, with its righteous protagonist and its theme of divine judgment and renewal, points toward something more profound than shared experience. It suggests the faint, fossilized footprint of an incredibly ancient, shared oral tradition, a story so foundational to the human psyche that it was carried by the first migrations out of Africa, adapting and evolving but never losing its essential shape. What cataclysmic event, real or symbolic, could have left such a universal scar on our collective memory? A story that binds the world's mythology into a single, whispering chorus. Scattered across coastlines and islands, a ghostly network of pathways is carved directly into the planet's bedrock. These are the enigmatic cart ruts, deep parallel grooves that slice through solid limestone in Malta, wind across the Italian countryside, and appear as far-flung as the coast of Turkey and the remote Azores Islands. They are not random erosion. They form intricate, intersecting webs, sometimes covering entire landscapes with the appearance of a petrified railway system. The most baffling aspect is their destination, for many of these stone channels run straight off cliffs, disappearing beneath the waves of the Mediterranean Sea. What kind of vehicle or conveyance created these ruts, and where was it heading when it rolled directly into the ocean? The mystery deepens with a startling measurement. Despite being separated by thousands of miles of land and sea, the distance between the two parallel grooves is often remarkably consistent. This uniformity suggests the use of a standardized axle, a common vehicle design that was in use across this vast territory. Yet no such vehicle, nor any physical remains of one, has ever been discovered. The sheer effort involved is staggering, gouging these durable pathways not into dirt, but into unyielding rock, a task that would have required immense resources for what seems like a mundane purpose. This was not a temporary solution. This was a permanent infrastructure project carved into the bones of the Earth itself. Their presence on islands like Malta and the Azores adds another layer of intrigue, fueling speculation about a lost maritime culture that connected these locations with a shared technology or a shared ritual. Perhaps these were not roads for trade in goods, but sacred processional paths for ceremonies we can no longer comprehend, their true purpose submerged along with the coastlines they once traversed. The cart ruts stand as a silent testament to a coordinated, global practice, a mystery written in stone that challenges our understanding of ancient mobility and connection. High above the Peruvian desert, the land itself becomes a canvas for the cosmos. The Nazca lines are a sprawling gallery of geometric precision, with straight lines stretching for miles across the arid plateau and colossal figures of a spider, a hummingbird, and a monkey etched into the earth. These immense drawings are only fully comprehensible from the sky, a fact that has fueled endless speculation. Yet their true genius may not be in their form, but in their function as a colossal astronomical clock. Many of the long, arrow-straight pathways align precisely with the point on the horizon where the sun rises and sets during the solstices, while others point toward significant star clusters. This was not random art. It was a sacred landscape engineered to track the slow, reliable turn of the seasons, a giant almanac written on the floor of the world. This impulse to map the heavens onto the Earth is a ghost that appears across the globe. In the California desert, the blithe intaglios depict giant human figures and spirals scraped into the dark desert pavement, and these too are aligned to solstice events. On a grassy hill in England, the Uffington White Horse, a stylized equine figure carved into the chalk, is believed to hold alignments with lunar cycles. Each of these sites, from the Americas to Europe, represents a monumental community effort. The creation of a single geoglyph required the removal of tons of dark surface rock to reveal the lighter earth beneath, a painstaking process that could only be guided by a deep and shared celestial knowledge. Why would cultures separated by oceans and continents all choose this same, incredibly demanding method? They were not merely observing the sky. They were weaving their place in the universe into the very land they inhabited, harmonizing their rituals, their agriculture, and their understanding of time with the great cosmic cycles. This points toward a universal human recognition that our world is a reflection of the heavens, and that by marking that connection on a grand scale, we could somehow participate in the eternal order of the cosmos. Yet another thread in this global tapestry is woven not from stone but from seeds. The silent evidence of ancient plant life presents a mystery that conventional history struggles to root. How is it that traces of coca and tobacco, two plants exclusively native to the Americas, were found within the wrappings of ancient Egyptian mummies? These were not wild seeds that could have been carried by a stray bird across an ocean. They were cultivated species processed for their specific properties, suggesting a deliberate exchange. The same puzzle appears in the Pacific. The sweet potato, a staple crop domesticated in the highlands of South America, was already a fundamental food source across the islands of Polynesia, long before any European explorers set foot there. This is not a case of two similar plants evolving independently. Genetic studies confirm these Polynesian sweet potatoes share their direct ancestry with the varieties grown in the Andes. To accept that these crops traveled solely by natural means stretches credibility to its breaking point. A sweet potato tuber cannot survive a long, saltwater soak to float across the Pacific. The journey of these plants points toward human agency, toward intentional voyages that carried precious, living cargo across vast and treacherous seas. This was more than just trade. It was the exchange of life itself, the sharing of agricultural knowledge that could sustain a population. The presence of these specific, domesticated plants on opposite sides of the world forces a profound question. If people were moving seeds, what else were they carrying? They were transporting entire cultures, ideas, and technologies, leaving a botanical signature of their passage that has outlasted their ships and their stories. This is not about proving a single, massive migration, but about acknowledging countless forgotten journeys that slowly, patiently connected our world into a single, living network. The mastery of fire and stone finds its ultimate expression in the transformation of Earth itself into metal. The leap from recognizing a shiny rock to systematically extracting, smelting, and alloying it represents one of humanity's most profound technological revolutions. We are taught that this Bronze Age dawned independently in separate cradles of civilization, from the workshops of the Near East to the forges of ancient China and the skilled metalworkers of the Andes. Yet when we look closer at the methods themselves, a curious pattern emerges. The intricate lost wax casting technique, for example, appears in the artifacts of ancient Mesopotamia, the ritual objects of the Indus Valley, and the exquisite goldwork of the Maya. This is not a simple process. It requires creating a precise model in wax, encasing it in a clay mold, then heating it to melt the wax away, leaving a hollow cavity into which molten metal is poured. For this same complex, multi-step recipe to appear in these isolated pockets of the world defies easy explanation. It is one thing to independently discover that copper is malleable, but quite another for cultures separated by oceans to all invent this specific, sophisticated method of creating detailed, hollow objects. The parallels extend beyond casting to the very chemistry of the alloys. The knowledge that adding a small amount of tin to copper creates bronze, a metal far harder and more durable than either component, is a discovery of advanced materials science. How could such specific chemical formulas and technical processes be stumbled upon again and again? This points toward something more than parallel innovation. It suggests the possibility of a shared technological catalyst, a foundational school of knowledge about the very elements of the Earth, perhaps a core set of principles regarding heat, chemistry, and craftsmanship was carried along ancient trade routes we have yet to fully map, or originated from a common, as yet unidentified source that first unlocked the secrets of the mineral world. The presence of this advanced metallurgical fingerprint across continents hints at a forgotten network of innovation, where the flame of discovery was passed from one culture to the next, leaving behind a legacy written not in stone, but in gleaming, enduring metal. Etched into the ancient stones of Newgrange in Ireland, a symbol of three interconnected spirals has watched over 5,000 years pass by. This is the Triskelion, a motif of perpetual motion, and its journey across the world is as mysterious as its meaning. While it famously guards the entrance to a Neolithic tomb in Ireland, this exact same symbol appears on the bronze shields of Mycenaean warriors in Greece. It is found carved into temple walls across Asia as a sacred Buddhist emblem representing the three jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And remarkably, the same triple spiral pattern emerges in the shell ornaments and pottery of the Mississippian culture of North America, a people who built great earthen pyramids along the Mississippi River. These cultures could not have been more separated by time and space, yet they all converged on this singular, complex design. Why would a symbol of three bent legs or three swirling arms hold such universal power? The answer seems to lie in a shared understanding of the great cycles that govern existence. The Triskelion does not stand still. It spins, suggesting the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars across the sky. It embodies the three phases of life itself: the beginning, the middle, and the end, or the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Its presence in a tomb like Newgrange, aligned with the winter solstice sunrise, makes this meaning stunningly clear. It is a promise written in stone, a declaration that the end is merely a prelude to a new beginning. The independent invention of a spiral is one thing, but the consistent, sacred adoption of this specific threefold form points toward something deeper than artistic coincidence. It feels like the visual manifestation of a universal truth, an archetype so fundamental to the human experience that it surfaced again and again in the spiritual language of our ancestors. Was the Triskelion a piece of a forgotten symbolic language, a chord teaching about the nature of reality that was carried to the farthest corners of the ancient world? Beneath the towering monuments and sprawling temples lies a hidden geography, a world of deep shadows and whispered echoes. Across continents, the same persistent story is told, a tale of vast subterranean realms that run like secret veins beneath the feet of humanity. For the Hopi people of the American Southwest, their very origin is rooted in the journey through multiple underworlds, emerging onto the surface only after great trials. On the other side of the planet, ancient Hindu scriptures describe the Nagas, divine serpent beings, residing in magnificent, jewel-studded palaces deep within the earth. These are not isolated myths. They feel like cultural memories of a time when the boundary between our world and the one below was far more permeable. The legends find startling physical form in places like Turkey's Cappadocia region. There, the underground city of Derinkuyu descends 18 levels into the volcanic rock, a labyrinthine complex that could shelter as many as 20,000 people. It was a complete hidden metropolis with living quarters, stables for livestock, churches, and intricate ventilation shafts that brought fresh air to its deepest chambers. This was not a temporary hiding place. It was a long-term refuge, a testament to a society that had mastered the art of living within the earth itself. The sheer scale of the engineering is breathtaking, yet similar, if smaller, subterranean complexes have been documented from Italy to Malta and even parts of South America. Why would cultures with no known contact all invest such immense effort in digging downward? The recurring theme is one of sanctuary, a sacred space for protection from surface-level conflicts or environmental hardships. But it also points toward something more profound, a shared belief in the earth itself as a living, sacred entity. These tunnels and chambers may have served as places of spiritual initiation, where individuals could symbolically descend into the darkness to be reborn into wisdom. The possibility that some of these systems were physically used for travel or communication between distant sacred sites cannot be easily dismissed. Could these widespread stories of subterranean worlds be the faint, fossilized memory of a global network, a lost infrastructure that connected the spiritual centers of the ancient world from below? The stones above ground tell one story of celestial alignment, but the tunnels below whisper another, of an earthly connection just as deep and just as mysterious. The human form itself became a canvas for a profound cultural statement. From the elongated skulls of Maya nobility to the distinctive head shapes of the Hunnic elite and the dramatic cranial modifications of the Paracas people in Peru, a curious tradition emerges across the ancient world. This was the deliberate, intentional reshaping of the infant skull, a practice that required careful binding over many years to achieve a specific, permanent form. It was far from a random act. In these societies, an elongated head was a powerful symbol, a visible mark of high status, spiritual authority, and a concept of beauty that reached for the divine. The individual was literally molded from childhood to physically embody a revered ideal, often to resemble gods or cosmic beings depicted with similarly shaped heads. The sheer geographic spread of this specific and invasive custom presents a compelling puzzle. We see it in the islands of Vanuatu in the Pacific, practiced into the modern era as a core cultural identity. The independent invention of head shaping is conceivable, perhaps arising from a shared human fascination with altering the body. Yet the consistency of its association with the elite and the sacred is difficult to ignore. This points toward a much deeper possibility. Could this be the physical echo of a much older, common cultural origin? A tradition so foundational that as groups migrated across the globe, they carried with them not just stories and tools, but a shared vision of the ideal human form, a memory of a time when looking a certain way meant you were closer to the gods. This was more than fashion. It was a universal language of identity written not in stone but in bone. Empty plazas and silent temples stand where once there was a chorus of life. A haunting pattern repeats itself across the ancient world, where magnificent cities and ceremonial centers were suddenly, and often mysteriously, abandoned by their inhabitants. The great Maya metropolis of Tikal, with its towering pyramids reaching for the jungle canopy, was left to the vines and the howler monkeys. On another continent, the meticulously planned city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, with its advanced water systems, fell quiet. And in North America, the vast complex of earthen mounds at Cahokia, a city that once rivaled London in population, was deserted. Historians and archaeologists point to plausible local reasons for each case, suggesting periods of drought, shifts in trade routes, or internal conflict. Yet, no single explanation fits all of these widespread collapses. The synchronicity is what gives us pause. How could cultures separated by oceans and living in vastly different environments all reach a tipping point at roughly the same eras in history? The very precision of their astronomical knowledge offers a chilling clue. These were cultures deeply attuned to long-term cosmic cycles. What if they were tracking something beyond the seasonal turn of the stars? What if they observed a coming shift in the global climate, a grand solar minimum, or a period of prolonged environmental hardship that their mythology and science had predicted? This was not a panic, but a planned exodus. The abandonment may have been a coordinated response to a shared celestial warning, a collective decision to leave the stone cities behind and disperse into a new way of life. The stones they left behind were not a sign of failure, but a testament to a profound and difficult choice, a global reset prompted by a wisdom we are only beginning to understand. What did they know about the cycles of the Earth that we have yet to fully grasp? The vast, empty oceans that we see on modern maps were not always barriers. For our ancestors, they may have been highways, the conventional story of a world where continents remained isolated from one another is being challenged by a growing body of evidence for ancient seafaring capabilities that far exceed our previous estimates. Consider the journey to Australia. Over 50,000 years ago, the first human arrivals had to cross a significant stretch of open water to reach the continent, a voyage that required more than just a raft being accidentally swept out to sea. This was an intentional, navigated journey into the unknown. Millennia later, the Lapita people performed one of the most astounding feats of exploration in human history. Setting out in their distinctive double-hulled canoes, they systematically colonized the scattered islands of the remote Pacific, from Vanuatu to Samoa, navigating by the stars, the waves, and the flight patterns of birds across thousands of miles of trackless ocean. These were not isolated incidents. More controversial but equally compelling are the scattered clues pointing to even wider connections. Roman coins discovered in the Americas and ancient African artifacts found in Brazil stand as silent, enigmatic outliers to our historical models. While each find can be debated individually, their collective weight paints a new picture of the ancient world. If Phoenician traders, Roman galleys, or even earlier, unknown mariners were capable of transoceanic voyages, however rare or accidental, then the mechanism for the global exchange of ideas becomes clear. The pyramid blueprint, the myth of the flood, the knowledge of the megalithic yard, all of these profound parallels could have been carried on the currents, passed from one curious culture to another in a slow-motion conversation across the seas. This evidence suggests a planet that was far more navigable and far more interconnected than our history books have ever dared to admit. Even the stones themselves seem to whisper the same structural secrets. In the deep shadows of a Mycenaean tomb, the ceiling soars upward not as a solid slab, but as a series of perfectly balanced stepping stones. This is the corbelled vault, a brilliant architectural solution where each stone is laid slightly farther inward than the one below, gradually leaning in until the walls gracefully meet at the peak. It is a structure of immense stability, holding its own weight for millennia without the need for a central keystone. This very same technique, this identical dance of balance and counterbalance, forms the majestic ceilings of the Maya at Palenque, where corbelled arches frame the doorways to sacred spaces. And it is found once more far across the desert in the rock-cut tombs of the Egyptian Middle Kingdom. The independent discovery of the simple post and lintel, a beam across two pillars, is easily understood. But the corbelled arch is a different kind of genius. It is a complex, three-dimensional puzzle of physics and geometry, a sophisticated answer to the universal human desire to create grand, open spaces without the ceiling crashing down. To see this specific and intricate solution appear in Greece, Mexico, and Egypt is to witness a remarkable convergence of the human mind. It is as if these master builders, separated by continents and centuries, were all working from the same fundamental principles of stable form. This points toward a shared, almost instinctual understanding of compressive force and gravitational balance. Were they all tapping into a universal architectural language, a common pool of engineering intuition that emerged when humans confronted the same physical challenges with stone? Or does this precise parallel suggest the faint, fossilized footprint of a much older, shared school of builder knowledge, whose fundamental lessons on how to defy gravity were carried to the farthest corners of the ancient world? The stones, in their silent, steadfast way, argue for a connection. High above the earthly realm of pyramids and temples, the ancient skies themselves whisper of another shared mystery. The sacred texts of India, the Vedas, contain breathtakingly detailed accounts of Vimanas, celestial chariots described not as vague magical clouds, but as structured vehicles with precise dimensions, multiple stories, and the ability to traverse vast distances. They are said to roar with fire and possess a speed that defies comprehension. This concept of a manufactured flying machine is not unique to India. It echoes in the biblical prophet Ezekiel's vision of a magnificent wheel within a wheel, a complex apparatus that moved with a spirit of life. It resonates in the Middle Eastern tales of flying carpets that could carry their riders across kingdoms in the blink of an eye. It even finds a parallel in the Polynesian legends of great sky canoes that sailed the ocean of the heavens. These are not simple stories of gods floating on the wind. They are consistent cross-cultural reports of technology, of vehicles engineered for flight. The descriptions often include specific elements that feel unnervingly familiar. like the fiery exhaust and immense velocity associated with the Vimanas. Could these persistent narratives be the fragmented, mythologized memories of a sophisticated technology that has since vanished from the Earth? One interpretation suggests that our ancestors were witnessing, and later describing in the only vocabulary they possessed, advanced aerial vehicles from a lost chapter in human history. Alternatively, these stories may represent a profound archetype, a universal human understanding that divine beings or enlightened ancestors would naturally travel the cosmos in vessels that mirrored their supreme status. Whether rooted in physical reality or the landscape of the human psyche, the global persistence of the flying vehicle myth points toward a unified vision of celestial travel. This was not just a shared measurement or a shared symbol, but a shared dream of ascent, a collective imagination that reached for the heavens in the same incredible way. The stones of the ancient world were not mute. They were instruments scattered across the globe, from the boulder fields of Pennsylvania to the highlands of Vietnam and the savannas of Africa, lie special rocks that sing. These are lithophones, naturally occurring or carefully selected stones that produce clear, resonant musical notes when struck with another rock. They are not random geological curiosities. At sites like Africa's rock gongs, often found near ancient rock art, the stones bear the polished marks of countless intentional strikes, revealing their use over generations. This was not casual play. It was the deliberate creation of a sonic landscape, a sacred orchestra of stone. The selection process itself required a profound knowledge, an ability to listen to the earth and identify which specific rocks, through their unique mineral composition and internal structure, held a perfect pitch within them. This universal appreciation for resonant stone points toward a deep, shared human instinct. Sound was not merely entertainment, it was a fundamental tool for spiritual practice and social cohesion. The act of creating music together, of harmonizing with the very bones of the planet, would have forged a powerful communal bond, aligning the rhythm of the people with the perceived heartbeat of the earth. Why would cultures separated by entire continents all arrive at this same sophisticated use of geological music? It suggests that our ancestors heard the same song in the stones, a universal vibration that they felt compelled to unlock, transforming the silent landscape into a living, breathing source of ritual and connection. Our final mystery brings us back to the very fabric of existence, time. The ancient obsession with measuring its passage was not merely practical. It was a profound philosophical and spiritual endeavor, a global project to synchronize human life with the grand, turning gears of the cosmos. The Maya long count calendar, a masterpiece of cyclical time, tracked vast epochs with breathtaking precision, while their astronomers charted the complex 584-day cycle of Venus with an error of just 1 day in 500 years. This was not isolated genius. On the other side of the world, the ancient Hindu Jyotisha calendar system calculated the motions of planets, predicted eclipses, and defined cosmic ages with a mathematical sophistication that still astonishes scholars today. Meanwhile, along the Nile, Egyptian sky watchers established a 365-day solar calendar, a civil timekeeping system so effective it became the direct ancestor of our modern calendar. That these cultures, in complete isolation, all developed such accurate and complex systems is a stunning tribute to human intellect. Yet when we look closer, a deeper pattern emerges. It was not just about knowing when to plant crops or hold a festival. Each system reveals a shared, underlying drive to weave human destiny into the celestial tapestry. The Maya saw time as a sacred burden carried by the gods. The Hindus perceived it as the rhythm of creation and dissolution in the endless yugas. the Egyptians aligned their calendar with the heliacal rising of Sirius, an event that heralded the Nile's life-giving flood. They were all using different numbers to tell the same story, a story of humanity's intimate and inseparable connection to the universe. This collective, global project to map eternity suggests a unified quest for meaning, a lost epoch of sky watchers whose first principles of cosmic order were scattered across the world, only to be refined and rediscovered by the civilizations that came after them. What were they truly trying to tell us about our place in the great cycle of the ages? 25 distinct mysteries, from celestial maps to singing stones, have each whispered a question that conventional history struggles to answer. But when their voices are heard together, they form a chorus too powerful to ignore. This is no longer a collection of curious anomalies. It is a coherent pattern, a tapestry woven with threads of shared knowledge that stretches across oceans and millennia. The evidence compels us to consider a new vision of our ancient past, one where the great civilizations were not isolated islands of genius, but perhaps connected points in a vast, forgotten network. The sheer volume and specificity of these parallels, from the megalithic yard to the myth of the flood, from pyramid alignments to the Triskelion symbol, makes the case for independent invention feel increasingly fragile. How many coincidences can we accept before the pattern itself becomes the explanation? This synthesis points toward a world where ideas, technologies, and spiritual concepts flowed along routes we are only beginning to map. Perhaps ancient mariners whose voyages are lost to the waves carried these seeds of knowledge. Perhaps a much older foundational culture whose own footprint has been largely erased by time and rising seas first encoded these universal principles. Their legacy would not be a single city or a named empire, but a scattered inheritance, a common curriculum of the cosmos that was adapted and built upon by every culture that followed. This is not to diminish the unique brilliance of the Maya, the Egyptians, or the builders of Göbekli Tepe, but to suggest they were all drawing from a deeper, shared well of understanding. The ancient world begins to look less like a collection of separate experiments and more like a single, interconnected conversation, a grand human project to understand our place in the universe. What we are witnessing in these stones is the fragmented record of that conversation, a global antiquity whose true story is only now coming back into view. Our journey through 25 evidence-based mysteries reveals an ancient world pulsating with unanswered questions. The astonishing connections we have witnessed, from the shared alignment of pyramids with Orion to the global echoes of the flood myth, defy any simple explanation of isolated development. We are left standing before a grand tapestry woven with threads of shared knowledge, a fabric of history far richer and more intricate than the one presented in our traditional textbooks. The evidence compels us to reconsider the entire narrative. The story of human civilization can no longer be comfortably told as a series of separate experiments, of cultures rising and falling in complete ignorance of one another across vast oceans. The sheer weight of these parallels, the precise mathematics, the consistent symbols, and the identical celestial maps all point toward a different reality. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not any single piece of evidence, but the collective picture they paint when viewed as a whole. This picture suggests a deeply interconnected ancient humanity, a global network of thinkers, builders, and explorers who possessed a sophisticated and unified understanding of the cosmos, the Earth, and our profound place within it. The stones they left behind are not just monuments to their own genius, but fragments of a much larger conversation, a conversation that spanned continents and millennia. The true story of our past appears to be far more complex, far more wondrous, and far more interconnected than we have ever been led to believe. It is a story waiting for us to piece it back together, one mystery at a time.